Hello everybody, and how are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're not drowned or absolutely saturated. If you're over in Australia, there's a lot of flooding going on at the moment. I also hope you're not really stuck in the middle of war-like situations, which are quite scary, I would imagine. It's beyond my ability to wrap my head around, actually, just the various things that are currently going on in the world. In case you're wondering, yes, I am looking different. I've got my hair pinned up at the back because it's just too hot at the moment. It's not sunny outside, but it's got all humid like it's meant to be raining. Hope we're not getting Brisbane's rain. It's meant to be rain. It feels like it's meant to be raining, and it's getting windy. So obviously we've got a weather change coming on. Sorry, I've got a knot in my neck. I'm just trying to stretch it out. Right, there, that should do. And I've just been finding some pictures for the book we're currently reading, The Phoenix and the Carpet. It's meant I've had to screen cap a whole lot of stuff. I haven't got them ready to put in yet, although maybe when we're doing a little bit of a break, if we do, I might see if I can crop one or two of them to make them available for putting in our stream today. So if you're new here, hi, I'm Jev, reading you old books, old children's books that I've read, my parents and my grandparents. Often they will be books that I read because they had read them and I grew up reading them. Why? Because if you read things from other times and places, it expands your understanding and appreciation of the world around you and how you relate to that. And we could all do with a bit of that at the moment, honestly. And also, it's just great fun. And it's a little bit of escapism too, because we're not stuck in the here and now of what's going on. It's great distraction, which is a good thing to do from time to time. Anyway, so we're currently reading The Phoenix and the Carpet by Nesbit. And I shall open up my iPad mini. It's first generation. It's a hand-me-down one. And because it's first generation, it doesn't do any updates anymore. And also I can't put any apps on it. So the only ones that it has on it, and they still work, which is wonderful, are things like the browser. So I can go to Internet Archive and download ebooks that are public domain from there. Internet Archive and Project Gutenberg, which is my preferred source for them, because then I don't have to wade through them, which ones are I don't have to tell the website I tell it what I'm looking for, but not what I'm looking for. If you go to Project Gutenberg, it's only the actual ebook versions. If you go to the Internet Archive, they also have audio versions. Depending on what it is, they will have video clips. They will have things that are coding things that they think happen to meet your search requirements and stuff like this. And it's just too much faff. Anyway, so yeah, this works. I can download books from Project Gutenberg, and the Books app that is built into it still works, so that's wonderful, and it makes it much easier for reading books that I don't currently have a physical copy of that I can share with you. So we shall get on with reading. Sorry, I'm just moving my keyboard and my chair, so hopefully it's not going to roll sideways too much or backwards and I disappear off into the distance behind me. Hopefully also the sound of the wind in my chimney is not going to be too much for you. We'll see how we go. I do have some tips. When you come to listen to stories or watch me being a bit of an idiot, bring along something to drink. Water is great. Keep yourself hydrated. That way your brain will keep working well. Oops, my chair is starting to slide sideways. Something to eat. Something to snack on. I've got my little Dutch biscuits again, my little Dutch spice biscuits, speculaas, and somewhere comfortable to sit unless you are studying or working, in which case you have to just make the most of whatever you are able to do while you're listening. And yes, I have no problem with you not giving me your full attention. I'm not going to say, listen, children, give me your full attention. There will be a test on this. No, we don't do that here. You're here because you want to be here, just like I'm here because I want to be here. To do with that. Oh, yes. I get very easily distracted. I get lost in the middle of a page. I refer to my type of reading as being more like bedtime stories than audiobooks, because audiobooks are all perfect and the accents are fabulous and they don't have mistakes anywhere, and the readers don't get lost and they don't get interrupted by anything, not like real life, which is what my ones are. So that's what they're like. This is about being real. And I think we can do with a bit more of that in the world at the moment too. Enough of that. Should we get on with the story? Okay, right. Get yourself comfy. Sorry, itchy nose. And then I shall start reading. And if I need a bit of distraction, I may actually have an attempt at cropping and editing a couple of pictures to be able to show you that are illustrations for this book. I'm not quite sure if I will pick where they're meant to be from, because the ebook that I have doesn't have the illustrations in, so I don't have that as a prompt to put them in the right place. Hopefully before I start reading next time, I'll be able to get them sorted out so I know where to put them in and be able to put them in for you. There's a wonderful series of illustrations that go with this book, and the chap who did these illustrations did a lot of illustrations for this particular author, Edith Nesbit, and she considered that he had almost like, she considered as almost a psychic link between her and him in terms of his perception of what she was writing and how it was to actually be portrayed. Felt very much that he had portrayed them wonderfully, appropriately for what she had written. So we shall start, shall we? Okay, righto. I'll read, you listen. The Phoenix and the Carpet by E. Nesbit. Chapter 3, The Queen Cook. Oh yeah, we're going to get some social attitudes that may not be what we're used to in our day and age. We can learn from this. We can learn that this is how you perceive people, or this is not how you perceive people or speak to them, or whatever. So don't be offended by it if there's content in here which doesn't meet modern requirements for what's appropriate. Learn from it. You can learn from anything if you choose. Right, let's get on with it. Chapter 3, The Queen Cook. It was on a Saturday that the children made their first glorious journey on the wishing carpet. That was what we had last time we were reading. Unless you are too young to read it all, you will know that the next day must have been Sunday. Sunday at 18 Camden Terrace, Camden Town, was always a very pretty day. And here's my second interruption. Camden Terrace is a real place in Camden Town in London, but number 18 doesn't exist on the current map. Now, I'm not sure if it was a made-up address for the story or if streets have been rearranged and houses have been renumbered. Doesn't matter. But just so you know, there is a real place called Camden Terrace in Camden Town in London, and you can look that up on a map right now if you want, and imagine what it was like for these children. It was always a very pretty day, Sunday was. Father always brought home flowers on Saturday so that the breakfast table was extra beautiful. In November, of course, the flowers were chrysanthemums, yellow and coppery coloured. Then there were always sausages on toast for breakfast, and these are a rapture. After 6 days of Kentish Town Road eggs at 14 a shilling. So therefore they normally had eggs for breakfast, and they were rather bored with them. Eggs because they were cheaper. On this particular Sunday, and I'm guessing that it is November in the story because of the fact that they've talked about November and chrysanthemums, and they haven't mentioned any others. We'll carry on. On this particular Sunday, there were fowls for dinner. A fowl is is a generic term for bird, as in chickens, geese, ducks, pheasants, turkey, all that sort of stuff. They're referred to as fowl. We'll carry on. On this particular Sunday, there were fowls for dinner, a kind of food that is generally kept for birthdays and grand occasions. And there was an angel pudding, when rice and milk and oranges and white icing do their best to make you happy. After dinner, Father was very sleepy indeed because he had been working hard all the week, but he did not yet yield to the voice that said, "Go and have an hour's rest." He nursed the lamb, that's their youngest brother, who had a horrid cough that cook said was whooping cough as sure as eggs, and Father said, "Come along, kiddies, I've got a ripping book from the library called The Golden Age, and I'll read it to you." I'm pretty sure that's actually a real book. Mother settled herself on the drawing room sofa and said she could listen quite nicely with her eyes shut. I think Mother's going to have a snooze. The lamb snuggled into the armchair corner of Daddy's arm. That means the way when Daddy's arm is around you, it feels like being in an armchair. And the others got into a happy heap on the hearthrug. At first, of course, there were too many feet and knees and shoulders and elbows, but real comfort was actually settling down on them, and the phoenix and the carpet were put away on the back top shelf of their minds. Beautiful things that could be taken out and played with later, when a surly, solid knock came at the drawing-room door. It opened an angry inch, and the cook's voice said, "Please, may I speak to you a moment?" Mother looked at Father with a desperate expression. Then she put her pretty, sparkly Sunday shoes down from the sofa and stood up in them and sighed. "As good fish in the sea," said Father cheerfully, and it was not too much later that the children understood what he meant. Mother went out into the passage, which is called the hall, where the umbrella stand is, and the picture of the monarch of the glen in a yellow shining frame with brown spots on the monarch from the damp in the house before last. So they're in a better house than they used to be in. And there was Cook, very red and damp in the face, and with a clean apron tied on all crooked over the dirty one that she had dished up those dear delightful chickens in. She stood there and she seemed to get redder and damper, and she twisted the corner of her apron around her fingers, and she said very shortly and fiercely, so she'd put on the other apron, the good apron over the top, because she's come out of the kitchen to the main part of the house where you're meant to be neat and tidy and look right, proper. "If you please, ma'am, I should wish to leave at my day..." Sorry, phrasing, it's odd. Probably just because the way the author's written how she speaks. "I should wish to leave at my day month." Mother leaned against the hat stand. The children could see her looking pale through the crack of the door because she had been very kind to the cook and had given her a holiday only the day before, and it seemed so very unkind of the cook to want to go like this, and on a Sunday too. "Why, what's the matter?" Mother said. "It's them children," the cook replied, and somehow the children all felt that they had known it from the first. They did not remember having done anything extra wrong, but it is so frightfully easy to displease a cook. "It's them children. There's that there new carpet in their room covered thick with mud, both sides beastly yellow mud, and sakes alive knows where they got it, and all that muck to clean up on a Sunday. It's not my place and it's not my intention, so I don't deceive you, ma'am, but for them limbs, which they is if ever there was, it's not a bad place, though I says it, and I wouldn't wish to leave, but..." She's sounding rather confusing. Quite typical at the time for someone who was a bit stressed about things. "I'm very sorry," said Mother gently. "I will speak to the children, and you had better think it over, and if you really wish to go, tell me tomorrow." Next day, Mother had a quiet talk with Cook, and Cook said she didn't mind if she stayed on a bit, just to see. In other words, the children better be well behaved, otherwise Cook's going to leave. Obviously, Cook has more than just cooking as her job. But meantime, the question of the muddy carpet had been gone into thoroughly by Father and Mother. Jane's candid explanation that the mud had come from the bottom of a foreign tower where there was buried treasure was received with such chilling disbelief that the others limited their defence to an expression of sorrow and of a determination not to do it again. But Father said, and Mother agreed with him, because mothers have to agree with fathers and not because it was her own idea, that children who coated a carpet on both sides with thick mud and when they were asked for an explanation, could only talk silly nonsense, that meant Jane's truthful statement, were not fit to have a carpet at all, and it shouldn't have, and indeed shouldn't have one for a week. So the carpet was brushed with tea leaves too, dried, having been used, ever so slightly damp tea leaves were often sprinkled on things and then brushed off, because the tea leaves would soak up bits of whatever it was that was on the carpet. It was used as a common cleaning remedy, you could say, but not actually a remedy. It's not something I've done, but I have heard of it before. So the carpet was brushed with tea leaves too, which was the only comfort Anthea could think of, and folded up and put away in the cupboard at the top of the stairs, and Daddy put the key in his trouser pocket. "Till Saturday," said he. "Never mind," said Anthea, "we've got the phoenix." But as it happened, they hadn't. The phoenix was nowhere to be found, and everything had suddenly settled down from the rosy wild beauty of magic happenings to the common damp brownness of ordinary November life in Camden Town. And there was the nursery floor, all bare boards in the middle and brown oilcloth round the outside, and the bareness and yellowness of the middle floor showed up the black beetles with terrible distinctiveness when the poor things came out in the evening, as usual, to try to make friends with the children, but the children never would. The Sunday ended in gloom, which even junket for supper in the blue Dresden bowl could hardly lighten at all. Junket is a dessert made of milk and sugar and something that makes it set very lightly. It's kind of like jelly, but it's not jelly. It breaks up very, very easily. It's quite yummy, actually, even though it doesn't sound like it. It was something that I had when I was growing up. My mother had some special dessert goblets, very, very, very fine glass that had this gold shine to them, even though you could see through them. It was a lustre coating on them, and they were only used for junket. I'm not quite sure why. It was just that was what worked for her in her mind, because you make it up, you heat it up, all together, all the ingredients, and let it cool a little bit, and then you pour it into whatever it's going into, and then it sets like jelly sets, but not as firmly. Anyway, I'll carry on. So junket seemed to junket for supper in the blue Dresden bowl could hardly lighten it at all. The sense of Next day the lamb's cough was worse. It certainly seemed very whoopy, and the doctor came in his brougham carriage. Brougham, sorry. Something tickling the back of my nose. Everyone tried to bear up under the weight of the sorrow which it was to know that the wishing carpet was locked up and the phoenix mislaid. A good deal of time was spent in looking for the phoenix. "It's a bird of its word," said Anthea. "I'm sure it's not deserted us," sorry, itchy nose, "but you know it has a most awfully long fly from wherever it was to near Rochester and back, and I expect the poor thing's feeling tired out and wants rest. I'm sure we may trust it." The others tried to feel sure of this too, but it was hard. Rochester is where they were when they had the adventures with the Psammead. I think that's what that's about. It was the reference to the fact that the phoenix would be tired because it had flown from where they were in this castle, which was in France, I seem to recall, over to Rochester to find the Psammead, and then back home, I suppose. It's a long way. It's Rochester and back, and I expect the poor thing's feeling tired out and wants rest. I'm sure we may trust it. The others tried to feel sure of this too, but it was hard. No one could be expected to feel very kindly towards the cook, since it was entirely through her making such a fuss about a little foreign mud that the carpet had been taken away. "She might have told us," said Jane, "and Panther and I would have cleaned it with tea leaves." "She's a cantankerous cat," said Robert. "I shan't say what I think about her," said Anthea primly, "because it would be evil speaking, lying and slandering." "It's not lying to say she's a disagreeable pig and a beastly blue-nosed boswas," said Cyril. who had read The Eyes of Light and intended to talk like Tony as soon as he could teach Robert to talk like Paul. So obviously it was a book, and was an insult used in the book? I don't know. You can look that book up and tell us. That would be good. The book is called The Eyes of Light. There you go. It's probably some adventure story. And all the children, even Anthea, agreed that even if she wasn't a blue-nosed Boswas, they wished Cook had never been born. But I ask you to believe that they didn't do all the things on purpose which so annoyed the cook during the following week, though I dare say the things would not have happened if the cook had been a favourite. This is a mystery. Explain it if you can. The things that happened were as follows. Sunday, discovery of foreign mud on both sides of the carpet. Monday, licorice put on to boil with aniseed balls in a saucepan. Anthea did this because she thought it would be good for the lamb's cough. The whole thing forgotten, and bottom of saucepan burned out. It was the little saucepan lined with white that was kept for the baby's milk. Now we need a new saucepan. Tuesday, a dead mouse found in the pantry. Fish slice taken to dig grave with. By regrettable accident, fish slice broken. Defence, the cook oughtn't to keep dead mice in pantries. Wednesday, chopped suet left on kitchen table. Robert added chopped soap, but he says he thought the suet was soap too. Thursday, broke the kitchen window by falling against it during a perfectly fair game of bandits in the area. The area being the bit outside the kitchen window, like a small yard. Friday, stopped up the grating of the kitchen sink with putty and filled sink with water to make a lake to sail paper boats in. Went away and left the tap running. Kitchen hearthrug and cook's shoes ruined. On Saturday, the carpet was restored. There had been plenty of time during the week to decide where it should be asked to go when they did get it back. Mother had gone over to Granny's and had not taken the lamb because he had a bad cough, which Cook repeatedly said was whooping cough, as sure as eggs is eggs. But we'll take him out, a ducky darling, said Anthea. We'll take him somewhere where you can't have whooping cough. Don't be so silly, Robert. If he does talk about it, no one will take any notice. He's always talking about things he's never seen. So they dressed the lamb and themselves in out-of-door clothes, and the lamb chuckled and coughed and coughed again, poor dear, and all the chairs and tables were moved off the carpet by the boys while Jane nursed the lamb, and Anthea rushed through the house in one last wild hunt for the missing phoenix. It's no use waiting for it, she said, reappearing breathless in the breakfast room, but I know it hasn't deserted us. It's a bird of its word. Quite so, said the gentle voice of the phoenix from beneath the table. Everyone fell on its knees and looked up, and there was the phoenix, perched on a crossbar of wood that ran across under the table, and had once supported a drawer in the happy days before the drawer had been used as a boat, and its bottom unfortunately trodden out by Raggety's really reliable school boots on the feet of Robert. I've been here all the time, said the phoenix, yawning politely behind its claw. If you wanted me, you should have recited the Ode of Invocation. It's 7,000 lines long and written in very pure and beautiful Greek. Couldn't you tell it to us in English? Asked Anthea. It's rather long, isn't it? Said Jane, bouncing the lamb on her knee. Couldn't you make a short English version like Tate and Brady? Oh, come along, do, said Robert, holding out his hand. Come along, good old phoenix. Good old beautiful phoenix, it corrected shyly. Good old beautiful phoenix, then. Come along, said Robert impatiently, with his hand still held out. The phoenix fluttered at once onto his wrist. This amiable youth, it said to the others, has miraculously been able to put the whole meaning of the 7,000 lines of Greek invocation into one English hexameter. A little misplaced, some of the words, but, oh, come along, good old beautiful phoenix. Not perfect, I'll admit, but not bad for a boy of his age. Well, now then, said Robert, stepping back onto the carpet with the golden phoenix on his wrist. You look like the king's falconer, said Jane, sitting down on the carpet with the baby on her lap. Robert tried to go on looking like it. Cyril and Anthea stood on the carpet. "We shall have to get back before dinner," said Cyril, "or Cook will blow the gaff." "I'm going to keep you in suspenders just for a moment or two and have a quick look at my other browser and see if I can figure out whereabouts in the next chapter we are that the pictures would be, so I can find out what illustrations we're meant to have. Okay, not that one. Thankfully, the ebook that I'm looking at on there, which is one that's a lone one, like a library book, which is why I can't actually use this for reading to you and showing you pictures at the same time. Thankfully, it actually has the chapter names at the top of the pages. So hopefully we won't be too long now. So far we haven't missed any pictures. I think there's only 2 in this chapter. There's the first one, and we haven't got there yet. But I shall have a quick look at what's in my folder here on my computer and see if I can find it for you. And go to the right folder, which is that one there, and paste them in. Paste, and then find the right picture. Come on. Because I'm not quite sure. Because they're huge, the images, because it's a screenshot, so therefore it has the other monitor on it as well, and I have to crop it down. And then it's also the whole of the book spread, which is 2 pages, blah, blah, blah. Let's see what this one is. Not that one, but it's very near there. Found it. And I shall try and crop it and save it so that I can show you when we get to that part of the story, which will be soon. And I'm so delighted that I've actually been able to find these pictures, because it's taken me so long. I have been looking for them and looking for them. It's been quite difficult. I'm not quite sure where that thinks it is. Specific books, find the right folder. We're nearly there, actually. I just want to have it available as soon as we get to that part of the story. And one more. There's 2 in this chapter, so I shall get both of them now, and then they're ready for me to use when we get to that part of the book. Right, and I shall close that, and we shall get back to where we are here. Get this ready for you, because it's soon, I think. It's a little bit of story to come. And then we shall be in the right bit. Oh, that's small. I have to resize it. I think that's because the original other one that was there, it's got some weird thing where it relates the scale that you've got your new picture to the scale of the previous one, and I think the previous one was huge, and so I had to shrink it down, which means that this next one was really small. Anyway, we'll get there. I shall carry on reading. And the only reason I'm interrupting like that to do it is because we don't actually have, these are very long chapters in this book. There were 44 pages in this one, and we've got 30 more to go. So they're quite long chapters. Which is why I'm having a drink in a way that's interrupting the read, as well as actually doing something on the computer for you so that you can see the pictures in a minute, because we don't have a chapter break that's going to give us enough. We're not going to have a chapter break soon enough to be able to get it any other way. So here we go. That's right, you look like the king's falconer, said Jane. Robert tried to go on looking like it. Cyril and Anthea stood on the carpet. We shall have to get back before dinner, said Cyril, or cook will blow the gaff. She hasn't sneaked since Sunday, said Anthea. Poor old cook, she's had to put up with all this extra nonsense. Oh my goodness, that's really would have been hard for her. Sorry, I'm just checking to see. There you go. I'll see if I can get myself a little higher in the frame so that if you're watching with standardized captions, most of them are below me. Nearly, I think. See how that one is. Kind of better. Whatever. Right. She hasn't sneaked since Sunday, said Anthea. Robert was beginning when the door burst open and the cook, fierce and furious. Remember, Mother's away at the moment for the day, the afternoon. So maybe she feels that she can actually take a little bit more action. The cook, fierce and furious, came in like a whirlwind and stood on the corner of the carpet with a broken basin in one hand and a threat in the other, which was clenched. Look here, she cried, my only basin, and what the powers am I to make the beefsteak and kidney pudding in that your ma ordered for your dinners? You don't deserve no dinners, so you don't. I'm awfully sorry, cook, said Anthea gently. It was my fault, and I forgot to tell you about it. It got broken when we were telling our fortunes with melted lead, you know, and I meant to tell you. Melted lead? I don't know. Do you? Meant to tell me, replied the cook. She was red with anger, and really I don't wonder. Meant to tell? Well, I mean to tell too. I've held my tongue this week through because the missus said she said to me quiet like, we mustn't expect old heads on young shoulders. But now I shan't hold it no longer. There was the soap you put in your pudding, in our pudding, and me and Eliza never so much as breathed it to your ma, though well we might, and the saucepan, and the fish slice. And my gracious cats alive, what have you got that blessed child dressed up in his outdoors for? We aren't going to take him out, said Anthea. At least, she stopped short, for though they weren't going to take him out in the Kentish Town Road, which is where they are, they certainly intended to take him elsewhere. But not at all where cook meant when she said out. This confused the truthful Anthea. She's wanting to tell the truth, but it's a little bit hard to do so when you've got weird things like this. Out, said the cook. That I'll take care of, you don't. And she snatched the lamb from the lap of Jane, while Anthea and Robert caught her by the skirts and apron. Look here, said Cyril in stern desperation. Will you go away and make your pudding in a pie dish or a flower pot or a hot water can or something? Not me, said the cook briefly. And leave this precious poppet for you to give us death a cold to. Death of cold, but she said death a cold. I warn you, said Cyril solemnly, beware ere yet it be too late. Late yourself, the little popsy wopsy, said the cook with angry tenderness. They shan't take it out, no more they shan't. And where did you get that there yellow fowl? She pointed to the phoenix. Even Anthea saw that unless the cook lost her situation, the loss would be theirs. I wish, she said suddenly, we were on a sunny southern shore where there can't be any whooping cough. She said it through the frightened howls of the lamb and the sturdy scoldings of the cook, and instantly the giddy go round and falling lift feeling swept over the whole party, and the cook sat down flat on the carpet, holding the screaming lamb tight to her stout, print-covered self, and calling on Saint Bridget to help her. She was an Irish woman, hence the appeal to the saints. The moment the topsy-turvy feeling stopped, the cook opened her eyes, gave one sound screech, and shut them again. And Anthea took the opportunity to get the desperately howling lamb into her own arms. "It's all right," she said. "Own Panther's got you. Look at the trees, and the sand, and the shells, and the big tortoises. Oh dear, how hot it is!" It certainly was, for the trusty carpet had laid itself out on a southern shore that was sunny and no mistake, as Robert remarked. The greenest of green slopes led up to glorious groves where palm trees and all the tropical flowers and fruits that you read of in Westward Ho and Fair Play were growing in rich profusion, so they're definitely in a tropical place. Between the green slope and the blue sea lay a stretch of sand that looked like a carpet of jewelled cloth of gold, for it was not greyish as our northern sand is, but yellow and changing, opal-coloured like sunshine and rainbows, and at the very moment when the wild, whirling, blinding, deafening, tumbling upside-downness of the carpet moving stopped, the children had the happiness of seeing 3 large, live turtles waddle down to the edge of the sea and disappear in the water, and it was hotter than you can possibly imagine, unless you think of ovens on a baking day. Everyone, without an instant's hesitation, tore off its London in November outdoor clothes, and Anthea took off the lamb's highwayman blue coat and his 3-cornered hat, and then his jersey, and then the lamb himself suddenly slipped out of his little blue tight breeches and stood up happy and hot in his little white shirt. "I'm sure it's much warmer than the seaside in the summer," said Anthea. "Mother always lets us go barefoot then." So the lamb's shoes and socks and gaiters came off, and he stood digging his happy, naked pink toes into the golden, smooth sand. "I'm a little white ducky, said he, "a little white ducky that swims," and splashed quacking in a sandy pool. "Let him," said Anthea. "It can't hurt him. Oh, how hot it is!" The cook suddenly opened her eyes and screamed, shut them, screamed again, opened her eyes once more and said, "Why, drat my cats alive, what's all this? It's a dream, I expect." "Well, it's the best dream I ever dreamed. I'll look it up in the dream book tomorrow. Seaside and trees and a carpet to sit on? I never did." "Look here," said Cyril, "it isn't a dream, it's real." "Oh, yes," said the cook, "they always says that in dreams." "It's real, I tell you," said Robert, stamping his foot. "I'm not going to tell you how it's done because that's our secret." He winked heavily at each in turn. "But you wouldn't go away and make our pudding, so we had to bring you, and I hope you like it." "I do that and no mistake," said the cook unexpectedly. "And it being a dream, it don't matter what I say, and I will say, if it's my last word, that all of the aggravating little varmints, that of all the aggravating little varmints—" "Calm yourself, my good woman," said the phoenix. "Good woman, indeed," said the cook. "Good woman yourself." Then she saw who it was that had spoken. "Well, if I ever," said she, "then this is something like a dream. Yellow fowls are talking and all. I've heard of such, but never did I think to see the day." "Well then," said Cyril impatiently, "sit here and see the day now. It's a jolly fine day. Here, you others, a council." They walked along the shore till they were out of earshot of the cook, who still sat gazing about her with a happy, dreamy, vacant smile. She's enjoying the dream. Because in her eyes it's a dream, it's not real. "Look here," said Cyril, "we must roll the carpet up and hide it so that we can get at it at any moment. The lamb can be getting rid of his whooping cough all the morning, and we can look about, and if the savages on this island are cannibals, we'll hook it and take her back." Hook it as in get lost. "And if not, we'll leave her here." "Is that being kind to servants and animals, like the clergyman said?" asked Jane. "Nor she isn't kind," replied Cyril. Well, anyway, said Anthea, the safest thing is to leave the carpet there with her sitting on it. Perhaps it'll be a lesson to her, and anyway, if she thinks it's a dream, it won't matter what she says when she gets home. So the extra coats and hats and mufflers were piled on the carpet. Cyril shouldered the well and happy lamb, the phoenix perched on Robert's wrist, and the party of explorers prepared to enter the interior. Now that's a quote, probably from one of those two books that Robert liked. The party of explorers prepared to enter the interior. The interior being going away from the shore and into the jungle, the forest. The grassy slope was smooth, but under the trees there were tangled creepers with bright, strange-shaped flowers, and it was not easy to walk. "We ought to have an explorer's axe," said Robert. "I shall ask Father to give me one for Christmas." There were curtains of creepers with scented blossoms hanging from the trees, and brilliant birds darted about quite close to their faces. "Now, tell me honestly," said the phoenix, "are there any birds here handsomer than I am? Don't be afraid of hurting my feelings. I'm a modest bird, I hope." "Not one of them," said Robert, with conviction. "Not one of them is a patch upon you." "I was never a vain bird," said the phoenix, "but I own that you confirm my own impression. I will take a flight." It circled in the air for a moment, and returning to Robert's wrist, went on, "There is a path to the left." And there was. So now the children went on through the wood more quickly and comfortably, the girls picking flowers, and the lamb inviting the pretty duckies to observe what he himself was, a little white, real wet water duck. And all this time he hadn't whooping coughed once. So quite possibly it's the cold and damp that's triggering his cough. The path turned and twisted, and always threading their way amid a tangle of flowers, the children suddenly passed a corner and found themselves in a forest clearing where there were a lot of pointed huts, the huts, as they knew it at once, of savages. That's the way they were often, people that were unknown were described. People living in jungles were described in children's adventure books, so that's why they were described that way here in this book. Savages. The boldest heart beat more quickly. Suppose they were cannibals. It was a long way back to the carpet. "Hadn't we better go back?" said Jane. "Go now," she said, and her voice trembled a little. "Suppose they eat us." "Nonsense, pussy," said Cyril firmly. "Look, there's a goat tied up. That shows they don't eat people." "Let's go on and say we're missionaries," Robert suggested. "I shouldn't advise that," said the phoenix very earnestly. "Why not?" "Well, for one thing, it isn't true," replied the golden bird. It was while they stood hesitating on the edge of the clearing that a tall man suddenly came out of one of the huts. He had hardly any clothes, and his body all over was a dark and beautiful coppery colour, just like the chrysanthemums Father had brought home on Saturday. In his hand he held a spear. The whites of his eyes and the white of his teeth were the only light things about him, except that where the sun shone in his shiny brown body, it looked white too. In other words, his skin caught the sun and reflected it quite strongly. Different people's skin catches the light differently. Some people's skin doesn't reflect it, and other people, their skin does. And I'm guessing that's what that description is referring to. If you will look carefully at the next shiny savage you meet with next to nothing on, you will see at once, if the sun happens to be shining at the time, that I am right about this. The savage looked at the children. Concealment was impossible. He uttered a shout that was more like, "Ooh, googery, bugwag," than anything else the children had ever heard. In other words, he was speaking a different language. And obviously the way this is written as if it's the children stating these things, I would say. And at once brown coppery people leapt out of every hut and swarmed like ants about the clearing. There was no time for discussion, and no one wanted to discuss anything anyhow. Whether these coppery people were cannibals or not now seemed to matter very little. Without an instant's hesitation, the four children turned and ran back along the forest path. The only pause was Anthea's. She stood back to let Cyril pass because he was carrying the lamb, who screamed with delight. He had not whooping coughed a single once since the carpet had landed him on the island. "Gee up, squirrel, gee, gee," he shouted, and Cyril did gee up. It's a phrase that you use to supposedly to speed up horses. Gee up! Or when you're playing horses. The path was a shorter cut to the beach than the creeper-covered way by which they had come, and almost directly they saw through the trees the shining blue and gold and opal of sand and sea. "Stick to it!" cried Cyril breathlessly. They did stick to it. They tore down the sands. They could hear behind them as they ran the patter of feet, which they knew too well were copper-coloured. The sands were golden and opal-coloured and bare. There were wreaths of tropic seaweed. There were rich tropic shells of the kind you would not buy. You would not buy in the Kentish Town Road, which has an area of shops, obviously, under at least 15 pence a pair for the shells. In other words, because you could buy shells, they would have been expensive. There were turtles basking lumpily on the water's edge, but no cook, no clothes, and no carpet. "Oh no! Into the sea!" gasped Cyril. "They must hate water. I've heard savages always dirty." So that's his thinking, is that if they're supposedly dirty, then they obviously avoid water. We'll find out, won't we? It's probably not very accurate. Generally isn't. Their feet were splashing in the warm shallows before his breathless words were ended. The calm, baby waves were easy to go through. It was warm work running for your life in the tropics, and the coolness of the water was delicious. They were up to their armpits now, and Jane was up to her chin. She's not as old, she's not as tall. "Look," said the phoenix. "What are they pointing at?" The children turned, and there, a little to the west, was a head they knew, with a crooked cap upon it. It was the head of the cook. I'm going to give you your picture now, the picture that we actually have. Here we go. I'll just move a little bit so you can see it. For some reason or other, the savages had stopped at the water's edge and were all talking at the top of their voices, and all were pointing copper-coloured fingers, were stiff with interest and excitement, at the head of the cook. The children hurried towards her as quickly as the water would let them. "What on earth did you come out here for?" Robert shouted. "And where on earth's the carpet?" "It's not on earth, bless you," replied the cook happily. "It's under me. In the sun. I got a bit warm sitting there in the sun, and I just says, I wish I was in a cold bath, just like that, and next minute here I was. It's all part of the dream." Oh dear, that means they've already used 2 wishes for today. I hope she doesn't say anything more that's a wish that might get them in trouble. It's all part of the dream. Everyone at once saw how extremely fortunate it was that the carpet had had the sense to take the cook to the nearest and largest bath, the sea, and how terrible it would have been if the carpet had taken itself and her to the stuffy little bathroom of the house in Camden Town. "Excuse me," said the phoenix's soft voice, breaking in on the general sigh of relief, "but I think these brown people want your cook." To eat?" whispered Jane, as well as she could through the water which the plunging lamb was dashing in her face with happy, fat hands and feet. "Hardly," rejoined the bird. "Who wants cooks to eat? Cooks are engaged, not eaten. They wish to engage her." "How can you understand what they say?" asked Cyril doubtfully. "It is as easy as kissing your claw," replied the bird. "I speak and understand all languages, even that of your cook, which is difficult and unpleasing. It is quite easy when you know how it's done, and it just comes to you. I should advise you to beach the carpet and land the cargo, the cook, I mean. You can take my word for it, the copper-coloured ones will not harm you now." It is impossible not to take the word of a phoenix when it tells you to, so the children at once got hold of the corners of the carpet, and pulling it from under the cook, towed it slowly in through the shallowing water, and at last spread it on the sand. The cook, who had followed, instantly sat down on it, and at once the copper-coloured natives, now strangely humble, formed a ring around the carpet and fell on their faces on the rainbow and gold sand. The tallest savage spoke in this position, which must have been very awkward for him, and Jane noticed that it took him quite a long time to get the sand out of his mouth afterwards. "He says," the Phoenix remarked after some time, "that they wish to engage your cook permanently." "Without a character?" That means a character reference, asked Anthea, who had heard her mother speak of such things. "They do not wish to engage her as cook, but as queen, and queens need not have characters." There was a breathless pause. "Well," said Cyril, "of all the choices! But there's no accounting for tastes." Everyone laughed at the idea of the cook's being engaged as queen. They could not help it. "I do not advise laughter," warned the Phoenix, ruffling out his golden feathers, which were extremely wet. "And it's not their own choice. It seems that there is an ancient prophecy of this copper-coloured tribe that a great queen should some day arise out of the sea with a white crown on her head, and, well, you see, there is the crown." It pointed its claw at Cook's cap, and a very dirty cap it was, because it was the end of the week. Excuse me. "That's the white crown," it said. "At least it's nearly white. Very white indeed compared to the colour they are, and anyway it's quite white enough." Cyril addressed the cook. "Look here," said he, "these brown people want you to be their queen. They're only savages and they don't know any better. Now, would you really like to stay, or if you'll promise not to be so jolly aggravating at home and not tell anyone a word about today, we'll take you back to Camden Town." "No, you don't," said the cook in firm, undoubting tones. "I've always wanted to be the queen, God bless her, and I always thought what a good one I should make, and now I'm going to. If it's only a dream, it's well worthwhile, and I don't go back to that nasty underground kitchen, and me blame for everything. That I don't, till the dream's finished, and I wake up with that nasty bell orang-tanging in my ears, so I tell you." "Are you sure," said Anthea anxiously, asking the Phoenix, "that she will be quite safe here?" "She will find the nest of a queen a very precious and soft thing," said the bird solemnly. "There, you hear," said Cyril. "You're in for a precious soft thing, so mind you're a good queen, cook. It's more than you'd any right to expect, but long may you reign." Some of the cook's copper-coloured subjects now advanced from the forest with long garlands of beautiful flowers, white and sweet-scented, and hung them respectfully around the neck of their new sovereign. I'm just going to check on the next picture for you, because I don't want to miss it. I better check to see if it's the right one. Okay, yeah, it's the right one, but we're not quite ready to open it yet. Here we go. Carrying on reading. Sorry, I'm just going to resize it slightly. There. Some of the cook's copper-coloured subjects now advanced from the forest with long garlands of beautiful flowers, white and sweet-scented, and hung them respectfully round the neck of their new sovereign. "What, all them lovely bouquets for me?" exclaimed the enraptured cook. "Well, this here is something like a dream, I must say." She sat very straight on the carpet, and the copper-coloured ones themselves wreathed in garlands of the gayest flowers. Here we go. There's the cook, right there, with the flowers around her neck, and there's the local people with their flowers as well. We haven't quite got to the bit that's describing, but we will in a moment. Themselves wreathed in garlands of the gayest flowers, madly stuck parrot feathers in their hair and began to dance. There you go, they began to dance. It was a dance such as you have never seen. It made the children feel almost sure that the cook was right and that they were all in a dream. Small, strange-shaped drums were beaten, odd-sounding songs were sung, and the dance got faster and faster and odder, till at last all the dancers fell on the sand, tired out. The new queen, with her white crown cap all on one side, clapped wildly. "Bravo!" she cried, "bravo! It's better than the Albert Edward Music Hall in the Kentish Town Road. Go it again!" But the phoenix would not translate this request into the copper-coloured language, and when the savages had recovered their breath, they implored their queen to leave her white escort and come with them to their huts. "The finest shall be yours, O queen," said they. "Well, so long," said the cook, getting heavily onto her feet, when the phoenix had translated this request. "No more kitchens and attics for me, thank you. I'm off to my royal palace, I am, and I only wish this here dream would keep on for ever and ever." She picked up the ends of the garlands that trailed round her feet, and the children had one last glimpse of her striped stockings and worn elastic-sided boots before she disappeared into the shadow of the forest, surrounded by her dusky retainers, singing songs of rejoicing as they went. "Well," said Cyril, "I suppose she's all right, but they don't seem to count us for much, one way or the other." "Oh," said the phoenix, "they think you're merely dreams. The prophecy said that the queen would arise from the waves with a white crown and surrounded by white dream children. That's about what they think you are." "And what about dinner?" said Robert abruptly. "There won't be any dinner with no cook and no pudding basin," Anthea reminded him, "but there's always bread and butter." "Let's go home," said Cyril. The lamb was furiously unwishful to be dressed in his warm clothes again, but Anthea and Jane managed it, by force disguised as coaxing, and he never once whooping coughed. Then everyone put on its own warm things and took its place on the carpet. A sound of uncouth singing still came from beyond the trees, where the copper-coloured natives were crooning songs of admiration and respect to their white-crowned queen. Then Anthea said, "Home," just as the Duchess and other people do to their coachmen, and the intelligent carpet, in one whirling moment, laid itself down in its proper place on the nursery floor. And at that very moment, Eliza opened the door and said, "Cook's gone. I can't find her anywhere, and there's no dinner ready. She hasn't taken her box nor yet her outdoor things. She just ran out to see the time, I shouldn't wonder. The kitchen clock never did give her satisfaction, and she's got run over or fell down in a fit as likely as not. You'll have to put up with cold bacon for your dinners, and what on earth you've got on your outdoor things for, I don't know. And then I'll slip out and see if they know anything about her at the police station." But nobody ever knew anything about the cook anymore except the children, and later one other person. Not quite sure what that reference is, but maybe we'll find out. Mother was so upset at losing the cook and so anxious about her that Anthea felt most miserable, as though she had done something very wrong indeed. Sorry, I'll turn that picture off. It's a bit distracting now. She woke several times in the night and at last decided she would ask the phoenix to let her tell her mother all about it. But there was no opportunity to do this the next day, because the phoenix, as usual, had gone to sleep in some out-of-the-way spot, after asking, as a special favour, not to be disturbed for 24 hours. I wonder if he's checking up on the cook. The lamb never whooping coughed once all that Sunday, and Mother and Father said that what good medicine it was the doctor had given him, but the children knew that it was the southern shore where you can't have whooping cough that had cured him. The lamb babbled of coloured sand and water, but no one took any notice of that. He often talked of things that hadn't happened. It was on Monday morning, very early indeed, that Anthea woke up and suddenly made up her mind. She crept downstairs in her nightgown, it was very chilly, sat down on the carpet, and with a beating heart wished herself on the sunny shore where you can't have whooping cough, and next moment there she was. The sand was splendidly warm. She could feel it at once, even through the carpet. She folded the carpet and put it over her shoulders like a shawl, for she was determined not to be parted from it for a single instant, no matter how hot it might be to wear. Then, trembling a little and trying to keep up her courage by saying over and over, "It is my duty, it is my duty," she went up the forest path. "Well, here you are again," said the cook. Directly she saw Anthea. "This dream does keep on." The cook was dressed in a white robe. She had no shoes and stockings and no cap, and she was sitting under a screen of palm leaves, for it was afternoon in the island, and blazing hot. She wore a flower wreath on her hair, and copper-coloured boys were fanning her with peacock's feathers. "They've got the cap put away," she said. "They seem to think a lot of it. Never saw one before, I expect." "Are you happy?" asked Anthea, panting. The sight of the cook as queen quite took her breath away. "I believe you, my dear," said the cook heartily. "Nothing to do unless you want to, but I'm getting rested now. Tomorrow I'm going to start cleaning out my hut, if the dream keeps on, and I shall teach them cooking. They burns everything to a cinder now, unless they eats it raw." "But can you talk to them?" "Lord love a duck, yes," the happy cook queen replied. "It's quite easy to pick up. I always thought I should be quick at foreign languages. I've taught them to understand dinner, and I want a drink, and you leave me be already." "Then you don't want anything?" Anthea asked earnestly and anxiously. "Not me, miss, 'cept if you'd only go away. I'm afraid of me waking up with that bell a-going if you keep on stopping here a-talking to me. Long as this here dream keeps up, I'm as happy as a queen." "Goodbye, then," said Anthea gaily, for her conscience was clear now. She hurried into the wood, threw herself on the ground and said, "Home." And there she was, rolled in the carpet, on the nursery floor. "She's all right anyhow," said Anthea, and went back to bed. "I'm glad somebody's pleased, but Mother will never believe me when I tell her." The story is indeed a little difficult to believe. Still, you might try. And that's the end of today's chapter. And it's after 4 o'clock, and I'm not starting another one because they're long chapters, I'm sorry. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'm hoping that I will be able to get the rest of the pictures edited for you so I can show them to you. And if you join us over on our Discord server, I should be able to put them up there so you can see the ones we missed in the first chapter. So that is Discord. I'll spell it correctly this time. You're welcome to join us on our Discord server. As I just said, I'm not sure, you probably have to agree to whatever the rules are for the server. Don't think there's anything else that is required for you to be able to join. Sorry, I was just checking to see if there was any other information I needed on the other screen. And if you are wanting to catch up with the children and their previous story, which was about the Samiad, the 5 children and it, the it being the Samiad, then you're welcome to go over to YouTube. I'm talking to the people here watching me live on Twitch at the moment. If you go over to my YouTube channel and go to the tab that says playlists, you will find one called 5 Children and It by Nesbit, and that has the whole of the book, and it has the illustrations from it. I managed to get those ones for that, and it's a collection of the videos from when I was reading that one over there. And if you are watching this over on YouTube, you are welcome to go to my Twitch channel and follow me on Twitch, and then Twitch will notify you when I go live, and you can join in with the chat. You can look things up for me and type those into chat so I can read them out to everybody if we come across words that we don't know, all that sort of stuff. It's lots of fun. Yes, and so the link for that will be in my profile on YouTube. That's where it will be. Actually, I can just type it in here for you. No, there's no point in typing it in here for you, because if you're watching on YouTube, you won't see it. And the other things that I've just mentioned, if you go to my Twitch channel, it will have the link for my Discord server. I don't have it on my YouTube channel just because there's so much more traffic on YouTube, and I want people to actually be a little bit more deliberate if they're going to try and be part of it. Sorry about that. So yeah, if you're on YouTube and you want to find out more, follow the link to my Twitch channel, which is on my profile, and from there you will be able to find the link through to our Discord server. Every now and then someone will suggest another book for us to read, or they will find out something about something. It's a great way to be able to share things about the books that we're reading, things that we know about the books that we're reading, all that sort of stuff. There are little bits of information from people's life experiences sometimes that are relevant, like the fact that when I was reading the Puck of Pook's Hill and Rewards and Fairies, I can't remember if I put any information on Discord, but I've actually been to the house where both those books were written, and they were written about set in the landscape that is around that house, as if the children of the story were living in that house and on the farm that's around there, and going past the mill and up the hill, which is Pook's Hill, and things like that. So, feel free to come and join us. Get into conversation. It's great because if you're interacting with me on Twitch, you can only do that when I'm online, and the information isn't saved for me to see afterwards. Whereas if you're on Discord, it's a little bit like a bulletin board where the message is left there and other people can see it later on. Anyway, so great to have you here. Great to see you. You're seeing me rather than me actually seeing you, but that doesn't matter. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and see you again. Bye.